Hey everyone, what is going on? This is Big Lou, and you're listening to Fat Cat Radio and the show From the Source. Right now, we're going to be interviewing Mr. David Burr from the Storm Chronicles, and we're going to hear everything that you want to know about this band straight from the source. I am obliged to have this band here. I have David Burr here. He's from the Storm Chronicles, as I said, and it's kind of like a picks up as it goes style. Very early Pink Floyd-esque sound. Miss Jody Dietz is involved with this band as well, and they have some serious music here. Very laid back and very tight music. So, David, how are you today, buddy?
Hi, Big Lou. Thanks for having me on, and I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm just so happy to finally get you on here. It's been kind of a little bit of a challenge to get this going, but, you know, at least we're finally here now. So,
right, yeah, well, we had a few scheduling things, but we made it work.
Yes, we did, and I'm very happy about this. So, first of all, welcome to Fat Cat Radio, and I'm very, like I said, very happy to have you here. And we have been giving you guys some airplay in the last few weeks, and if you go back at some of the shows, you'll see some comments about your music. Some people are really digging this. I'm trying to send people your way as well, but this is the next step in this for us, is interviewing you, getting your showcase out there. We share this with a few other stations around the world, including the United Kingdom. So what we're going to do is have a good time, and you know what? Consider it a conversation with an old
Sounds
friend.
Good.
So, all right. So,
Great.
you know what? I hate to be very general about this, but how did you get the name for this band?
The band name?
Yeah.
Well, I came up with it. It's kind of an interesting story, I guess. I had always had this thing about the word storm, and just because it illustrated so much, a lot of deep philosophical stuff, that can be summed up by using the word storm. And it was something I had, for some time, had associated with myself over the years, for a number of different reasons. But when it came time to figure out a name for this band, I originally had a different name, and found out that another band, I don't know, across the world, the other side of the world, already had that name.
Yep.
So I was like, well, we can't have that. Their project's already established, and at the time my project wasn't out yet. So I did I just used a thesaurus and just kind of did some searching around and stumbled across the word Chronicles, and I was like, okay, that's cool. So Storm Chronicles was born.
So let me ask you. You said you really like that word storm. Now you're on the West Coast there. What is it, Washington?
Yes.
So you guys get hit. You guys are like on the you guys are right on the path of El Nino, and you guys get some good storms over there, I presume, correct?
Well, yeah, it's mostly rain. I mean, we get a few thunderstorms here and there, but the storms aren't nearly as intense as they are in other parts of the country. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, everybody, Seattle, rain, that's the big thing everybody associates with Seattle. So
yeah,
we get our fair share, yeah.
Now you said that that word has always been a part of you. Is there a root to that? I mean, how did it actually become something that you've always loved for that word?
Well, it's something that kind of came about over the course of 15 years or so. I mean, it was just life experience. We all have our struggles, our things that we go through, and they contribute to the music that we make. And I had, at one point, just kind of associated that word storm with some other things that I had gone through in my life, and all that played a role in making this music possible. And so I think that's about as best an answer as I can give to that. I mean,
no, that's fine. I don't want to beat a dead horse with it. I just was curious, So, all right.
It kind of goes. It's a personal thing. It goes back a little ways. And when it came time to figure out what a good band name would be, I just loved what it symbolized. Not just in my own life, but for a lot of people. People go through their struggles. They have their problems, their ups and downs, marriages, divorces, whatever. Right. And those kinds of things can be pretty stormy. So I wanted to Come up with something that I felt
it's a metaphor.
Would be easy for people to relate to.
Yeah, it's a metaphor for you, though. I could see that.
It is. Well, it's a metaphor for me, but it's a metaphor for a lot of other stuff. The music, is not just about me. The music is hopefully about common things that we all
Right.
can
Absolutely.
relate to.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the beginning here. Oh, well, you know what? Actually, I want to take a step back. Let's talk about the actual album.
Okay.
How long did it take to write this?
Well, I think if I'm going to pin it down, the Storm Chronicles project has been in development for like 20 years. But a lot of that is just indirect, me kind of learning my chops and learning my songwriting craft and all that as I go. There's a lot of songs I wrote, 15 years ago that I never would have any desire to do now. It came about. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Can you repeat the question?
Well, basically, what we're talking about is the development of your album.
Right. Well, it's something that I started writing the songs that actually appeared on this album probably about 13. A lot of the songs that you played in our showcase, for example, the showcase last hour, songs like "Run" and "Looking Backward" Part 1 and 2, those were written like in 2002. So,
oh wow! So yeah, so
I had been sitting on them for a long time, and
a lot of development.
I had some demo, a lot of development, and I had a lot of demos of all these songs, but I didn't want to release the demos; they weren't quite up to the quality standard.
Right.
So, probably about 3 years before the album was actually released. It was released in September 2013 now, so it's actually been out a while. But about 3 years before that, that's when I started doing the intensive recording and really the work that was going to actually bring these songs to their final format and their final production quality and all that. And so it's just been an ongoing thing. It's something I worked with. I've written all kinds of songs. I have a huge backlog of material. But once we actually decided, okay, the time has come, we like the material we've got, it's time to really get down and make this album now. That's when Jody came in, and she helped with some of the writing as well. And
she got a great voice.
That started about 4 years ago.
She has a great voice. So, let's talk about the band. Who does make up the Storm Chronicles besides Jody?
It's just me and her.
Oh, are you kidding? That's really
it.
good. We interviewed a couple young kids, 16, 17-year-old kids called the Brazen Youth, and I didn't even know they were a two-piece band, and it's amazing. That's good job, man. That's some great stuff for a two-piece band.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I did all of the instrumentation. Actually, we did have a friend of mine came in and did a little guitar for one of the songs, but for the most part, I did all the instrumentation and the production, and Jody handled most of the vocals, although I also contributed to the background vocals. And then she helped kind of polish up some of these songs and get them to their final format. So
I don't remember the name of the song it was, but one of the songs, I think it was you singing. Your voice sounded like Geddy Lee. It was interesting.
Really?
Yeah. That's what I was pulling out of that. But once again, you have some great music. I love the progression. I love how it reminds me. All right, like "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" from Pink Floyd. Okay, it builds, and I feel that your music builds just like the old school Pink Floyd, like that. And having that type of format, not only can it come across as relaxing, but it can also come across as emotional. Your music is actually speaking. It's not just playing, it's speaking. And that's what I like about this too. That it totally speaks. Your music is like David Gilmour when he plays his guitar. You're speaking. And
well,
that's
thank you.
You did a good job on that, man. And I got to just give you kudos where it's due.
Well, thank you very much. We really do appreciate that and the exposure. we had a heck of a time trying to figure out where this music was going to fit in terms of what genre it was going to fit in. I personally am influenced by a lot of progressive rock bands like Rush and yes, Genesis, and a lot of lesser-known names like Marillion and Porcupine Tree, Spock's Beard, things like that.
Right.
And I didn't want to. I never thought that I was actually good enough to make that kind of music. To be honest, I know it's a horrible thing to say, but I just didn't, And we're always our own worst critics.
Of course.
And
of course.
But when it came time to release this album, I didn't even know really how to position it, where to target it. I knew it was some form of rock, but we were like, okay, where are we going to fit in here? Where are we going to find our home? And it seems that the progressive rock world is the community that has embraced us the most. We just got a review in the new issue of Progression magazine.
Yeah, I saw it. Tell us about that, because that was a pretty decent review.
Yeah, and it's a pretty in the world of prog. It's a pretty well-known, well-respected publication. There aren't many actually print publications in the world of prog, progressive rock music. So, I was kind of surprised. It's interesting. In the review, there was actually a comparison to Rush on those songs that you just mentioned. So, I've heard that a number of times, which it's always weird, from the artist standpoint, because I don't hear it, but I think, hey, if whatever's connecting with people, that's what's important.
Of course, and that is what's important, because, as you said, you want people to relate to your music, and you do a good job in conveying that. So let's change gears here. Let's talk about what's happening now. Do you have any plans on getting back in the studio, or?
Oh yeah. We've been working on the album. Jody's just starting to come in and do some of the vocals now, but I've been working on the album for the past year and a half or so, and it's mostly written. A good part of it's written and recorded, and it's actually quite a bit more involved, I think, than the last album. Let's just say the progressive rock community will probably really like this next album, because the songs are averaging in length around 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So there's only going to be about
you had a couple of those
songs on the album.
You had a couple good long songs in this album as well. I believe it was Individual. That was almost 9 minutes, I believe. And that was great. Exactly. That was one of my absolute favorites on that album. Individual really was a hell of a track. I can't express to you the magnitude of your music. Again, I'll say it again. You have a build up, and it really hits people, especially me. So let's ask about your process here with this. You have this new album here that you're trying to write. When you guys sit down to record it, how do you guys get? You guys obviously deal with a little bit of writer's block and stuff like that. So, in saying that, how do you cope with these major obstacles? Are you OCD about it and obsess about it until it's done, or do you take a step back? Do you reflect? How does it go?
Both. One of the things about taking as long as it seems to take us to make albums is is that it gives us a chance to go back and listen to a song that we've been working on, say, for a few months, and go back and hear things in it that we didn't hear before, either for the better or for the worse. And I think a lot of times when artists, they put out albums, and sometimes they're just on autopilot. They just crank them out, and they're good albums, but it doesn't give them a chance to kind of reflect on their songs and go, well,
right,
do I really like that? Or in retrospect, I wish I'd done this that way or whatnot.
Yeah.
And so, we do hope to have this album out, hopefully sometime early next year. But it does take time.
Absolutely. And I'd love for you guys to I'd love for you to send it over to me. If you want, I could do an exclusive release so people can hear it, the whole thing, before they buy it. I wouldn't make it downloadable or anything like that. So but if in the event that, even still, I would still like to, if you don't want to do exclusive, I would still love to have it so I can play it.
Right.
So
right. Well, we'd be happy to. Yeah, I'm sure we can make that happen. So, but let me go back on the genre thing for a sec, because it ties into the writing a little bit that you talked about. When I was like I said before, we were kind of having trouble figuring out what what genre to kind of classify ourselves. And so we settled on something like adult album alternative rock and progressive rock. So you put those two statements in there, and that just, really could confuse people even more. I don't know.
Yeah,
but,
I progressive rock it is, but it does have some more roots in there. So I feel modern roots as well. Some of the stuff that you were hearing when there was a transition between classic rock to rock, and then to grunge, and then over to a progressive rock. You've harnessed quite a few different sounds in there, and it's appreciated, I'm sure, in the community.
Well, exactly, and it depends. We've gotten some airplay on some indie internet radio stations, podcasts, and whatnot, and it's always interesting, the progressive rock airplay, those, like Oral Moon is a progressive rock station, and we're in rotation on them as well. They play more progressive songs, like Individual, but the indie rock stations, they tend to go more for things like Run and Corners, and because they tend to be a little bit more, I don't know, for lack of a better word, accessible, poppy, or at least from my perspective, it seems like it. So, and we like all the songs, but they each have a different person and a purpose, and depending on who you are, the songs you're going to relate to on that album will probably be, different. So,
just
what your frame of reference is.
Right, exactly, and that's a great way to put it. Just to take a step back here, Twism Whitepiece, he's an award-winning host and artist. He wanted to give you a shout-out and say thanks for being a part of Fat Cat Radio. And John Minervini said, your music has amazing sound, deserves a chance on mainstream.
Wow.
And Gary Fremantle said, and if you wanted to, if you're able to do this through while being interviewed on our Spreaker page, there's a live chat there. Gary Fremantle said, where did the influence for Individual come from? It's great. So if you wanted to maybe answer that question for him.
Well, yeah, I can. Well, the influence for that one, let's see, when did I think I wrote that one probably about 9 or 10 years ago. And that was something that, well, it's almost a little too blatant in my view, but I was really listening to a lot of Stephen Wilson and Porcupine Tree work. And
wow.
And I really liked his darkness and the chord progressions, and I really wanted to do something a little darker. And so I was attempting to accomplish that with this song. But at the same time, I always appreciated some of the spacier kind of flowing elements of Pink Floyd. So it was kind of a mix of the two,
Right,
and they're
yeah.
just influences that, I have so many influences, and so does Jody. And so anything that we put out, it's bound to have traces of some of those influences in it. And, which is why you get all the comparisons to different Pink Floyd or Fleetwood Mac or whatever the case may be. So...
there's definitely like I said, I'll keep beating that one. There's definitely that harness of that progression from the old school days with the acid type rock. The darkness that brings to light is something that I've always loved in my music, as from my own personal music that I like to listen to. So. In saying that, it was the approach dark? I mean, you're saying you wanted to bring it darker. Now, when you took that approach, I mean, did you feel like that maybe it wasn't going to work at some time, but then, if it all came together?
What, with the whole project?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, the phone cut out a little bit there.
Oh, I see.
I had so many doubts. I mean, I just because... even though I've been sitting here plugging away at this music thing for quite some time, I'm a complete unknown, and so is Jody in the world, of original music. We hadn't done anything really, so at least not anything on this scale. So it just, when it came down to it, let me go back for a second on this writing thing, because when it came down to writing the new album, we had actually planned on doing a whole bunch of songs. We were going to just make out we we put out Looking Backward, and then my plan was, okay, we're just going to do a little 5-song EP. I've got all these extra songs from the Looking Backward sessions, and we're just going to put out a little EP. I'll be able to bang them out real quick. They're already mostly written. Well, it didn't work out that way. Once I sat down to start writing, I was so encouraged by the response I saw in the progressive rock community that I was just like, okay, I'm just going to go for it now. Yeah. And so the new album is going to have a lot of that kind of stuff on it, a lot of longer pieces and more complex, more movements within the song. And some people will dig that, and maybe some people will they'll throw them off a little bit. You never know. So
yeah.
It just depends on the person. So.
Taking that step back that you were just talking about, let's go back to the beginning here. When you were young and you were a kid, what was your first instrument? How old were you when you decided that you wanted to play some music? And was it forced upon you by a parent? Did they buy you an instrument and say, hey, here, play this? Was it in school,
no.
Stuff like that?
No. I mean, my parents had me in piano lessons, and keyboards, piano is the first instrument, and it's still my primary instrument. It's the one that my skills are best on. And has served me well because I can do a lot of different stuff with that. It's not just keyboards and piano. When you're dealing with sounds, anything that can be played on a keyboard, can end up on an album.
Right, exactly. So, oh, no, keep going. Sorry.
No, what were you going to say?
No. I have a tendency on jumping in and changing the direction, but keep going on that. I want to hear a little bit more about this, and then we're going to move a little forward with, getting into your years here. I'm
sorry. Can you repeat the question again? I keep losing track of the questions as I start rambling.
See, that was my fault because I decided I wanted to jump a little forward on that one. But all right, so you had started out, and you were dabbling in a few different things. That's where we were when you were younger.
Yeah, with the keyboard, sorry.
Yeah.
So I learned keyboards from an early age. I took a few years of piano lessons, and that kind of gave me a foundation. And I also taught myself guitar at an earlier age, too. And I never actually, when I was a kid, it never even occurred to me that I could even do music, like as a be in a band or anything. I just naturally didn't think I had that. I was a huge music fan and still am. And I loved music, but I always, doing the air guitar in the living room to a stereo, that was me as a kid. Always wondering, I'd love to do something like that, but no, there's no way I could do something like that. I'd never be good enough.
Oh, boy.
Well, by the time I was 18, I decided to take a shot at it and started realizing that people who had heard me play seemed to think that I was pretty decent. So I joined a band and whatnot, and mostly just cover bands for those first few years. When I was 18, I started playing in bars and cover bands, and that kind of got me going. And a few years later, but during this whole time I was also writing songs. So primitive songs, albeit. But a few years later, I ended up with an original project. The project, it was a cover band, but we did a little EP, and there were two of my songs were on it. There were 3 writers in the band, and we each had 2 songs. And that's when I really started to get a taste of what original music really meant to me.
Yeah.
Or I guess I should say I got to understand more about what was important to me. And so I started focusing my energy on playing original music and writing original music almost exclusively.
Right.
I got tired of the cover band world, and it just wasn't for me. So I just over the next 20 years or so just kept writing and doing different things. I had another writing partner for about 10 years, a good friend of mine, and that he moved away. We went our separate ways on that for a little bit, and that's where Jody came in. I was looking for a singer for quite some time, and Jody answered an ad, and that's what brought us to this point.
Nice. You had when you took that jump over to use your word, primitive writing, and getting there's an emotional expression there when you go from playing other people's music to being able to express yourself through your own music. That value changes a person. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It changed my whole focus and for the rest of my career in this, and remains to this day. There was a gig we played, and this is, I think, the moment, I've often talked about this, but the moment where it really hit me that, okay, this is cool, is we were playing a gig, and it was the first time we were playing a gig with this band back when I was 21. It was the first gig we had played where this band, which is normally a cover band, it was an all-original gig. So we were playing all songs from our EP and some other original songs. And what happened was this flood, this crowd just was all of a sudden there. We had no idea how many people were into what we were doing or whatnot. But it was one of those things, there were like 4 bands up on the night, the bill, in a club somewhere. And place wasn't that busy or anything, but when we got up, we were like the 3rd band, and when we got up, all these people came out of nowhere, and next thing I know, I see people mouthing the words to our songs as we're playing them.
Oh, man.
And that had a profound impact on me.
Oh,
they're sitting there singing the words to my own song back to me, and I'm like, whoa.
There's definitely a difference between, now I was a bassist and vocalist for a hardcore punk band for years, and when we started out, we were just on the bottom of the bill, and then 6-7 months later, playing a local hardcore club in New Haven, Connecticut, people knew our music. And that, you're right, it's just profound. When you know that you're going and people are going to listen to you, it changes the dynamic of the industry for the person. I agree with that 100%. That's exactly. One of the most fulfilling things that you can encounter in this business.
I agree.
There's nothing better than that. But I do want to say just take a step back to what we were talking about in that transition from cover. I want to start back before that. What was that first song you learned on your guitar?
Oh, I don't even remember.
I
have no idea. I mean, I think, it was probably something I was listening to on the radio, being a child of the 80s. There's a lot of, before I really got immersed into, progressive rock and bands like Rush, I was kind of a late bloomer on a lot of that stuff. At the time, I was listening to a lot of top 40 and whatnot, so I think, Duran Duran, or Bryan Adams. Just I was a kid, and I probably just played along to whatever I was into at the time.
Well, it's I'm glad you made this jump because your music now, like we were talking about, is really stellar. It's great. Now, you talked about gigging. Are you still actively gigging?
No, we're not gigging at all. We don't even have a live band yet to do this.
Oh, okay.
We are working on that. That's going to be, we get this album out, that's our next step, or between now and the time we get the album out, we hope to put together a live band, because we do want to do some shows at some point. But
absolutely.
Being starting from scratch, which is really what we were doing, with almost zero following except for friends and family that had known what we were up to, it takes some time to establish yourself, and we want to make sure there's actually a demand for a gig there.
Right, exactly.
At some point, that people want to actually see us at some point, then we will work on that. Eventually, that is in the cards, though. I absolutely want to do that. In fact, live playing is my favorite thing at all. If I could just play live, I love playing live, and I enjoy that more than actually recording in the studio. But at the same time, I wanted to kind of establish the band on record, and then whatever band we put together, kind of use that as the template, and that band will take that music and learn it, and I'm sure the music will evolve once that happens as well. But either way, I wanted to establish the project on record to have a standard for any live band to reach for.
There's you just answered Lourdes Ramirez. She asked, are you planning on a tour on the East Coast? So you kind of answered the question. You're still putting it together, but you know what? Not having it together is you guys are still great.
We would love to actually get over to the East Coast. One thing I like about the East Coast is they are so receptive to progressive rock music.
Surely.
The progressive rock bands do really well over there. A lot better than here in Seattle.
There's a demand over here, especially the Northeast. There's a lot of progressive rock bands here. I mean,
you get all of my heroes and the bands I'm into. They're always hitting, on tours where they're limited and can't get over to the West Coast. They'll still hit the East Coast, at least New York and Boston.
Absolutely. So, David, when did you decide to make this a career? What was that pivotal moment? Was it when you started writing your original music? I mean, is that when you just said, I want to do this?
Well, it's kind of a weird thing. It's always been my career.
Right.
It may not always pay. It may not have always paid very well, but it's always been what I consider my life's work. So in this sense, career is a different thing. I did some other things. I used to be a freelance writer. I went to college, got a degree, did all that stuff as well, but didn't end up really using it for much. Music has always been my passion, and I've had some other jobs that I've worked that were in my field of writing and communication, which was my other field of expertise. But now music's really been the thing that's always been with me ever since I can remember. And I've always considered that my primary objective in life is to make that happen.
Right.
That have a family,
Exact. And speaking of that, you said that this album dropped in September 2013. And you are working on another album. How do you feel about your balance between your musical career, the business aspect of it, and life? How do you feel that balance is going right now?
Well, I would like to say that it's fairly balanced, but it's really hard to keep that balance in check. I get in these modes when I'm writing or recording where it's really hard to focus on other things, which is also part of why I don't start an individual session unless I know that I can be there for a few hours, because it's just, once my head's in that groove, it is really hard to get it out of it. And even if I'm doing other stuff, I've got songs running through my head and parts that I'm writing and all that. So my mind's always working in that regard. However, though, I've got a beautiful family. We do make time and spend time together and do things. And I've got a little boy who is just amazing. And
how old is he?
So we try to keep that balance in as much as we can, but sometimes it gets shifted one way or the other.
Absolutely. I understand that. Life happens, and sometimes there's nothing we can do about it. How old's your boy?
He's 5.
Oh, that's such a great age. My kid's 14. I'm ready to punch him. He's like 6'1", size 14 shoes, and it's just crazy. Kid's a monster, but he's still a good kid, man. But I remember the years when he was 5. I actually had to leave my band, Strychnine, when my son was born. So that's when everything changed for me in the music industry. For me, but
gotcha.
In saying with you, we've had some discussions about the demand as a father for you, and I feel that one day you'll get that balance just right. When he gets a little older, it'll even be different for you. Be able to focus more. You can bring him with you, and you know what I mean. So I feel like in the future,
sure,
I see a definite better balance for you in that.
Well, and actually, part of what helps keep the balance is I do get to spend a lot of time with my son because I'm a stay-at-home dad by day.
Right.
So we made the choice to have one of us stay home. My wife and I made this choice, when he was born, that this is what we wanted to do, and it just made more sense for me to be the one to do it.
Right.
So I take care of him during the day, and then at night I'm a hermit in my room down there in my little home recording studio, and that's when people don't see me for a few hours after he goes to bed. So. But I do get to do both, and
right.
I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to do both because it doesn't always work out that way.
I can totally relate to that because I'm on Social Security for PTSD, and I'm in a role reversal family myself. My wife goes to work. You know what I mean? I'm the stay-at-home guy. I cook, I clean. I do my radio thing. I
exactly.
I have fun. And then the nighttime I spend with my wife and all that stuff. So I could respect that, and I know what you're doing, and it is tough. But that escape that you get, those few hours, really, I'm not saying being with your son all day doesn't lighten your day, but getting that that creative ball out, really can tap the day up for you.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does, and that's it's. Admittedly, I mean, I'm exhausted a lot of times at the end of the day, and that's part of why this album is and the work that we're doing is taking a little longer to complete, because I'm trying to balance these things out, and there are only certain times in a day that I can actually work on music.
Right.
So progress is consistent, but it's slow.
Right. And that's okay.
Although I see some time freeing up here in the next few months, so I'm hoping we'll be able to kind of speed up the process and get this album out a little sooner.
Very good. Very, very good. That's good to hear. Now, speaking of speeding up, let's just say you get a call. You know what? You get a band together. You're finally ready to do this, and you get a call, and you're ready for mainstream. These people want you in mainstream, and they want to sign you. And are you ready for that? Are you ready to go mainstream and the life that goes along with it?
Well, I don't know if anybody's ever ready, especially if they've never done it before and don't know what they're in for.
Well, I think what I'm saying...
I would love to see that happen. It's hard for me to think in those terms, though, because it's always about the music first. And so the thought of... I kind of do whatever I want musically.
Right.
Now, I don't really try to do one style of music or another style for any group or whatever. For the most part, I just do what I'm feeling at the moment and whatever comes naturally to me. But it's hard for me to even envision this music having any kind of mainstream appeal, or at least the bulk of it. There are a couple songs maybe, but yeah, it's hard for me to think about that. So I just expect that it won't happen. I go into it expecting, because you can't really, I mean, you can shoot for the stars,
of course,
do as much as you can, but
you've got the right sound.
Yeah.
In the progressive rock spectrum, you are on a different angle of it, and that sound, I think, will go over well if you had made it to mainstream. I mean, listen, you have a family, though. I feel that it might be challenging for you if somebody said, "Hey, we want to sign you, and I want you to go on a tour." I think that might be challenging for you. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely do. I mean, just raising a kid by itself is challenging, and I only have one.
Right.
So, for those who have more, it's extra challenging. So, it's something where it would have to depend on, my family comes first, always.
Of course.
But this is also a serious goal of mine to try and really establish some kind of, at the very least, some kind of cult following for this music. And I think it's starting to happen a little bit.
Now,
I'll take it as far as I can, and my wife is very supportive. So if the opportunity came to do something on a larger scale, I'd absolutely want to embrace that and try and make it work as much as possible, so long as it doesn't have any kind of like a negative impact on my family or that.
Right. Yeah, and it's good it's good that you have the support, and you are starting to accumulate the cult following. You know what I mean? But let me ask you, in the position you're in right now, if you look at the last year in the Storm Chronicles, and you look at the next year in Storm Chronicles, what do you think that you have to do more of in the next year?
Oh, more promotion, get this other album done, and make a band. Put a band together, and get out there and try and start putting some live music out there if we can. But the main goal is, above all, increasing awareness about what we're doing.
Right.
Because ultimately, as a musician, what we want to do, or at least what I want to do, my goal is to connect with as many people as possible.
Yeah.
I want as many people as possible who relate to what this music or whatever. I just want to connect with that music to as many people as possible. And So, and it's one of those things where a lot of promotion, is something I do anyway, but it's kind of hard balancing making an album out with, trying to also be your own kind of manager and
surely,
have you run promotion and all this stuff.
Have you thought about submitting your music to something like, TV stations, Discovery, National Geographic? Because I could see some of your music being involved with documentaries and stuff like that. You have that good sound for that. Have you ever thought of that?
Actually, that's a good point. Actually, that is something that I just have started exploring, the idea of licensing this music for other things, like
purposes,
you say, TV or buffer music or whatever.
Sure.
So that is actually something I'm just now beginning to get into and research, and we'll be submitting to a number of different places here, probably within the next month or so. Start with that whole process. So the promotion thing, the increasing our awareness and exposure, that's always an ongoing thing. And if we get lucky and we can actually make a little money at it at the same time, then that's just a bonus,
Yeah, definitely. So let me say this. First of all, I think that you have a good direction and you know what you want. But I think the question that I really need to ask you right now is, besides family and having that support and your love for music, what else is driving your momentum right now to strive for this? Is it just getting it out there so people can hear you, or is there something else in there that's driving you right now?
I think ultimately everything that I'm trying to do, I would like to think of it in the context of setting an example for my son.
Yeah.
What you can do when you set your mind to it, working hard and working your butt off.
Right.
And whatever you do it the absolute best you can. And so what's part of what drives me is definitely my son and wanting to show him all these things and to teach him all these things.
Yeah.
Aside from the other stuff of just, getting the music out and gaining a following and a bigger following and whatnot, But I'd have to say my son drives a lot of this, too.
Is that your son on the album cover?
It is.
Oh, very handsome little boy there. Very handsome. You did a good job with Photoshop, I'll tell you that.
It was a photo that we took. It was kind of an accident how that came about. It was a photo we took. I think we were on a playground somewhere visiting in California, my dad or something, and we were playing on the playground. Took this photo, and I looked at it, and it just suddenly struck me. Wow, that could work. So that could be an album cover. So I saved that photo, and when it came time to actually sit down and work with an artist on making the album, I said, all right, I've got this picture. What can we do? And so he did his magic and imported it somehow, and then we put all this other stuff around it, like water and dots and stuff.
Absolutely. And looking at your cover, the cover to your album, listening to your music, it brings out a lot of different interpretations. So people can interpret this differently, and I definitely will presume that, especially with your sound. I mean, looking backward, okay, on all this, that whole album there, what song are you just most proud of?
Oh,
one that moves you emotionally to a point where when you were recording it, it brought you to a whole different place.
Well, and there's two different elements to that, lyrics and music. I would, because a lot of this is, well, I won't get into that too much, but a lot of the lyrics are what have really got me, that are really important to me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that musically those are my favorite pieces. I would say Looking Backward 1 and 2 are really important. I mean, they're kind of the cornerstone of the album, simply because they kind of set the subject matter, they set the foundation for the whole album and everything that was going to happen after that, meaning the other songs on the album and anything that more or less happens even from this point forward. So I'd say Looking Backward 1 and 2. Run was also important, too, for the lyrics. But again, it's not something musically that it wasn't my favorite piece musically. It was a bit of a struggle to get it done. So
right. There's nothing better than though getting the end result with the and knowing that struggle was worth it. And I can hear it in your music that I know in your heart right now you are completely satisfied with this album, and you're like you're like me in a way. When I'm satisfied with something, I believe that if you're satisfied with something, that no matter what comes your way, you're proud of it. Is that safe to presume?
Well, sometimes.
Sometimes.
It just depends. I mean, this album there was a lot of emotional stuff that went into this album over the course of, like I said, 15, 20 years.
Right.
Sometimes I'm satisfied with it, and sometimes I'm not. Unfortunately, I tend to be, I think, a little bit more of a perfectionist than I'd like to be. Sometimes I wish I could just work a little quicker. But and in doing that, if you're a perfectionist about things, there are some things that'll just never sound right to you, that you'll never be fully satisfied with. However, with that said, I wouldn't have released the album if I wasn't at least comfortable enough with it to go, okay.
Yeah.
I think we've got something here. I think, let's see what people think, And I had to talk to myself and say, okay, just remember, it's just a snapshot of where you are at this point in time.
Right.
The next album will be another snapshot. So that helped me to let go of a lot of it and go, okay, let's just do the best I can and see what people think,
So you're comfortable, and that's good. I
am comfortable with the album. I'm kind of, the response we've gotten from it so far has been really positive, and that has helped a little bit because I wasn't sure how people would accept it. So I think, I don't know if it's not being happy with things or being happy. It's just there's a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty of when you're putting a song out there and no one's heard it, and you have no idea. As an artist, you often are too close to it, and it's really hard to tell. Here's an example. So we found out the song on our album, Ghostwriter, has actually been one of our most popular songs. A lot of people just love that song, and that totally took me by surprise. I didn't think that was one that people would gravitate towards as much. And it's funny how that works. You think one thing is going to be a certain way, and it turns out to be something else. And we had actually run a little poll on our website at one point, and had that. And then I found out people were all into this song, and I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. So you just never know. You never know what's going to happen until you put it out there. And
right, yeah.
As an artist, we're too close to it. We can't always see objectively as much as we try to.
You know what, though? I mean, it's just, hey, you throw a piece of bait on the hook, you throw it out there. They bite, and more than likely they will with your sound. When you get this band together and you start gigging, there's definitely going to be some buzz. Definitely. Without a doubt in my mind.
I sure hope that's the case. That would just be wonderful.
Let's talk about you now. Let's get into the mind of you, David. What's your definition of home?
Home? It's a foundation. And this is actually kind of a theme that has been in my writing, kind of weaved in and out of my writing, more so in earlier songs that I wrote that no one will ever hear. But I've always thought of home as kind of the foundation, and it just speaks to the kinds of things that were important to me and still are, when I wrote some of these songs. And it's been a theme that's kind of followed me throughout my life, is the idea of establishing your own family, your own foundation of something with stability and, of course, lots of love. But all those things that make a family so powerful, that's what a lot of this is about for me.
And that's personal gain. Personal satisfaction. Having that foundation as the definition of your home gives you that, and that I think that's what helps you look forward as well as to respect your behind, not your, you know what I mean, your back life. Anywhere in your life, was there some advice that was given to you? Was there a motto? Is there something that you live by today?
No, not really. I know that's not a very interesting answer, but
it's okay.
I can't think of. I mean, if I thought about it hard enough, I'm sure once we're done with the interview, I'll think of something. But no, it's not anything. There's nothing I can really think of.
So then, hey, let's just move on with that. Then, is there somebody out there, some musician that you've longed to collab with or do a workshop with?
No. Oh, there are plenty of influences, but I think I would probably be a little too insecure to collaborate with any of my heroes.
And you know what, though,
okay,
David?
I don't belong here, you know?
David, I got to say something. You know, I want to boost your self-esteem here for a moment. Look, that review you got should be that's like throwing gasoline on your already existing fire. That should make you bright and happy, dude. That was a good review, man. You know what I mean? Harness that, man. Use that, you know, to move forward, man. You know?
Yeah, I hear you.
You know, so
well, I think if I had to choose someone, it would probably be I'd probably want to learn a few things from the keyboardist for the band Marillion. His name's Mark Kelly. I've always thought his work was just fantastic. So if I could work with anything, I think work with anyone, it might be another keyboardist like that. Just to learn some things and try and see what kinds of things what kind of knowledge I can gain just from that kind of experience. That's where it would be really cool.
If you can go back in time, what would you do differently in this endeavor?
I wouldn't have taken so long. I think ultimately, because you can't go through life with regrets, at least in my view, because, everything that happens makes us who we are. And you learn from things that you might regret, things that you'd wish you'd done differently, but you learn from them and they make you a stronger person in the end.
Right.
At least I believe so.
Yeah.
So, I kind of wish I'd gotten my act together a little sooner. It took a long time. I was going through, some personal stuff, and I went through a couple divorces and some other stuff as well, and it just took a while. And so I feel like sometimes I wasted a lot of time. There was a lot of time I could have done something more with all of this a little sooner. So if I had a regret, that would be it. But at the same time, I have more wisdom now as a result of it, so I can't really call it a regret.
Right. That's good. Keep that beside you, though, man. Blink your eyes right now, man. Go somewhere. If you can just go anywhere, where would it be?
Oh, anywhere?
Anywhere, anytime, anywhere, any situation in your life.
Okay, I'm sure there's something more
or if it's the beach of Fiji, man, it's all good. So.
How about wherever Rush is playing tonight? I want to catch their R40 tour before.
Oh, man, would I love to see
before they
that.
Pack it in, because I hear it's one of their last big tours. So, but you know what? I'm sure if I had thought about it more, I think I'd probably have something a little more profound to say. But right now, I just want to see Rush on their last tour.
I don't blame you. I love Rush. When I was playing bass for all them years, boy, I loved learning his bass lines, man. Loved him. He was so cool, man. He had that progressive sound, man. And for me, as a blues influenced foundation, I loved that. I loved learning those new chops, man. They were so much fun. I love Rush, man. I'm glad to share that with you, man.
Yeah, great band.
What would you say was the most important day in your life?
The most important day in my life, when I met my wife. And that's the most important day in my life because, well, actually, I'd say the day my son was born, but those two are kind of tied in together. I met my wife, and without her, there wouldn't be my son. So
right.
It's definitely one of those two, probably tied for first right there. They're really, obviously, my son is everything. So as our kids are to us. But, yeah, that which established my family is, I'm just so grateful for them. So.
Having and being a family man in this industry creates a lot of respect from people, especially with me. I mean, I work with a lot of people that are family people. Like one of our hosts, award-winning Twism White Piece. You know, he's got 5 kids, man, and he does so much, and I really respect that. I really respect that family foundation, man. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. You know, at least for me, it's really important. You know, that your family unit, and being a parent has been the most profound thing that ever happened to me, becoming a parent. And you know, and everybody who's there already, they know that. It changes you.
It sure does. It sure does. I agree with you 100%.
I suppose even I didn't realize just how much it was going to change me. I knew it was going to change, but you never really know until you're in the thick of it yourself. So
exactly. So, you know what, David? Let me take 3-4 of your most closest personal friends, and let me sit down with them. Right? What would they say they appreciate about you the most collectively?
Oh, collectively, probably that I usually speak my mind, and I don't. I don't usually hold back too much if I believe in something. I think they'd probably mostly say I'm really passionate about my beliefs and about my music, but it's not just music; it's my beliefs in general. So I've always been very passionate about the things that interest me, the things I believe in, and so I've always tended to kind of go at these things with a certain amount of fervor.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that would be one of the main things they would say. Is they would, people think of me, they think music. Yeah, David, he's obsessed. he's really into it. So, but the passion and dedication, I think, is what they would, for doing this, and I think that's probably what they would, one of the things they might notice or point out.
And respectable again. I just want to say that's really respectable. How important to you is image?
Image?
Yeah.
Well, I don't feel like, I don't know. It's not to some degree, but at the same time, it just depends on what we're talking about. You know, in terms of how people look and whatever. The whole idea that you've got to look a certain way or, look cool, look like a rock star, whatever the case, I see a lot of band photos, and it's and it's just like we're all always trying to make ourselves look cool, And
certainly.
In the end, I would love it if we didn't have to deal with photos or videos at all. I would prefer it to just be about the music and nothing else,
Yeah.
So but it's important to the extent that I think you have to be aware of perceptions of what you do. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to change what you're doing or whatnot, but the way that a project or an artist is perceived can sometimes, have an effect on at least some people being drawn to that artist or being repelled away from it. So you do have to kind of somewhat be aware of that, but again, it's not something I don't think I would.
So
it's more
you're not,
like what kinds of things I choose to share.
You're not really worried. You're not really worried about people. You're not worried whether people like you for the real you. This is who I am. This is what I'm doing, like it or not.
Well, that's it. I mean, people are going to think what they're going to think. They're going to believe what they're going to believe, and there's not a whole lot you can really do to change that, and nor should we. We all have our things within ourselves that we make improvements in our own lives. I'd like to think most of us, we strive to be better at whatever it is we're into, whatever it is we do, and I think that's what matters more than anything else. I think a lot of people have that, Sorry, I lost where I was going. But
that's all right, man. That's all right, man. I'm picking at you in all different angles here, so I can expect that. So that happens a lot.
Yeah, sometimes these interviews, I don't always know that I do quite as well on my feet as I'd like to.
Hey, man, you know what? So far, man, we're almost wrapped up. But I want to say you're a very real person, and that's what makes a good interview, is being able for you to be open up about your insecurities, about your positive markers in your personality and in what you do. These are great things. These are things that make up a good interview, because it brings you down. So people are like, one day, when you make it big, man, people are going to listen to this interview and they're like, you know what, man, this dude is real. And that's important, man. That's important, dude. Staying true to you.
I agree, and that's one of the reasons I wanted. I was interested in doing this interview, was because it just occurred to me. We don't put a lot of posts out on Facebook and whatever. I mean, we try to. We're trying to get better about updating our Facebook more often. But a lot of times there hasn't been as much to talk about, except for me in the studio working away at the album. But I think that people. I lost my train of thought.
You're a busy guy.
I get off on a tangent. I'm like you, Lou, in this regard. I tend to go off on these things, and I forget where I'm going with it.
Hey, you know what, man? It's okay. Let's go past this. I want to do a quick fire with you. I want you to fill in the blank, and I want you to, the first thing that comes to your mind and heart. My life would be blank without music.
Can I say the word I want to say?
Absolutely. Say you can put a phrase in there.
Shitty.
Oh, this is explicit, man. Uncensored completely. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. I don't know what I'd do without it, honestly. But yeah, it's so deeply ingrained in me. It's a part of me. So yeah, I think life would be pretty dismal without music.
Okay. My blank defines my style.
I don't know. Do I have a style?
You do.
My blank defines my style. I don't have an answer for that one.
Hey, it's cool.
Because I don't really. It's style. I don't know.
If I were to answer that for you, I would say probably your emotions define your style, because you put a lot of emotion in your music. But
yeah, that's probably a fair thing. Yeah.
All right, so let's go a couple more of those. Family makes me blank.
Full.
Okay. To me, change is blank.
Inevitable.
That is very true. The most important person in my life is blank.
My son.
Very good. Social media is blank.
Frustrating.
I hear you on that. I definitely do. All right, so that was just a few questions, just to touch a couple angles of your persona and who you are and all that stuff. I set that up for that, and we're gonna move towards the wrapping up portion of this. You've been promoting yourself. You've been this is all about you, and you have your partner in crime here, who's been doing this with you, Jody Dietz, and you guys have been doing this all on your own, pushing and pushing and pushing. For an artist that's just starting out like yourself, give them some tips. Tell them what's the best way to get out there to promote yourself.
Well, taking interviews like this. that's one way to do it when they come about. I think it's, you go out there, you look to get reviewed, you look to get airplay on different internet radio stations. There's a lot of resources out there where you can find places to submit to.
Absolutely.
Even within your genre of music. And I think it's important to be relentless and just keep submitting stuff out there and letting people hear your music and getting it to as many places as possible, whether it be a forum or a chat room, any chance you get to actually get your name out there and hopefully get people to, lend you an ear for half a song to see if they like you. That's it.
You went over very well with your showcase today. Your showcase went over well, and people are at work right now, so later on you're going to get plenty of exposure throughout, and plus in the upcoming weeks, and you'll always be in our archive as well. So
that's great. And may I jump back in with something?
Sure. Say whatever you want.
I remembered one of those times I lost my train of thought. What I was going to say was one of the reasons I wanted to do this interview was indeed to give people a chance to kind of hear for themselves what we're about. As I was starting to say, we don't do a lot of promoting on Facebook. We try to. I mean, we have a Facebook page.
Yeah, you've gone up quite a few likes today, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's great. I'm always pleased to see people are into what we're doing. It
right.
just really is touching and humbling. So, but yeah, so now hopefully people, for better or for worse, have had a chance to kind of, and will have a chance to kind of see what we're about. So if I've explained it very well.
You know what? For the people that didn't and couldn't tune into the showcase, and now they're tuning into the interview, for the new listeners, describe your music and what message you're trying to send as a whole.
It's not so much a single message. I'll answer the second part first. It's not so much a single message as a reflection. What I'd like to think is a reflection on, people, society in general. A lot of the stuff that we talk about in these songs, they're not meant to be about someone's specific situation.
Right.
Some of them might be, but as we talked about earlier, we open it to interpretation. I want people to try and figure out what the songs mean to them. So I don't want to try and define it too much for people, because I think that takes away from the enjoyment and from the, I want someone who's listening to the Storm Chronicles to go, okay, I want them to relate to the music or the song in their own way, not in the way that I have said, hey, this is what the song's about.
Right. Like we said earlier, there's many different ways that you can interpret your music. Absolutely. Without a doubt.
Right. So, but I would say that it's not so much a singular message, and this is also part of where the Chronicles thing, I think, comes into place. But it's talking a lot of the things we talk about are, in the songs are about kind of the human condition, how people interact with each other, how people treat each other, for better or for worse.
Right.
And what the result of these types of interactions is. And so it's kind of a reflection. It's a chronicle of hopefully where we're at as a people, and
right.
And if it's something that, like I said, if people can relate to it and they find something in it that they like, that really connects with them, and they can go, yeah, I can really identify with that, then that's what it's all about for me.
So, you know what? Let's break it down now. Where can people get your music?
Well, they can get our music on our website directly, which is www.stormchronicles.com. And but if not there, we're on iTunes, we're on Amazon. You can either buy the CD or digital download, either way. But we usually recommend people go to our website first. But
of course,
either way, yeah, we're pretty much all over the place. CD Baby, we've got pretty widespread digital distribution. We're on Google Play, we're on Spotify.
Where can people buy physical?
Yet is Pandora. So.
Where can people find physical albums to purchase?
You can get those on our website directly.
Okay, good.
Stormchronicles.com. Yeah, but they can also get them on Amazon.
All right. And, just real quick, this is an offbeat question. I'm just curious because the mind of Mr. David Burr here is very interesting, and I'm just curious to the answer of this question. Who's your favorite author?
My favorite author?
Yeah.
Well, there was one person in particular, but I would prefer to keep that name quiet because it was a political thing, and I don't.
Oh, hey, it's all good. It's all good.
But there, I mean, yeah, that. I'd prefer to keep that one private.
Hey, you're that is your right, my friend. That is your right. All right, so you know what? At the end of every interview, I ask this one question. It's one of the few questions that are standard in my interviews. And I want you to either you can mash it up between your personal or your music, or you can just pick one or the other in a way to answer this and what's driving your answer. And I always get different answers for this question, but I feel like that this question really is dear to me, and this is what I like to know from each and every person I encounter.
Okay.
What kind of mark are you trying to make on the face of today?
Well, I just want to be around for. I want people's I want my music to be out there for people to connect with, however they want to. I don't necessarily have any expectation or desire to do anything other than just get my music into as many people's ears as possible. What I hope that it'll do is, maybe some guy who's going through a bad time or some girl who's going through a bad time, they hear a song and it helps them get through a really bad time in their life.
Right.
That's enough for me. And if it's one person, that's fine. If it's 300 people or 3,000, that's even better. But I just want to connect with as many people as possible. And I think beyond that, I think it would be a little too, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't have any expectation for any kind of mark that I want to leave other than to provide, something for people to relate to who are interested. Aside from the fact that, as I mentioned before, I want to leave something for my son.
Right.
And that, for him, some sort of mark for him to say, okay, this was his career. This is what my dad did. And, if you can do anything you set your mind to,
If life can take a few words from you and paint it that you'll always be remembered by, what would those few words be?
Oh, I wasn't prepared for that.
I know.
Can you repeat it one more time, please?
If life and the world can take some words from you and paint it so forever you could be known by these words, what would those words be?
Stay true to yourself.
Very good. Very good, sir. David, I want to thank you for coming out and spending this time with me. And, you had said before we went live that you're not that interesting of a person. You can't imagine, this taking more than an hour. Actually, it was 72 minutes. So,
wow.
You're a little more convoluted than you thought, my friend. All different levels. You've got all different levels to you, my friend. And I want to thank you personally for spending the time with me here, and especially in your little bit of free time that you get every day. So,
well, thank you, and thank you for having me, Big Lou. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate everybody listening in too, and for 70-something minutes.
Hey, you know what, man? It was a good one, and I appreciate it. If you can do me a favor, David, and just hold on the line, I'm going to wrap this up. You're listening to the show from The Source, and this was Mr. David Burr himself from the Storm Chronicles. Once again, guys, if you missed his showcase, you can go into recent episodes on the station, or you can go into the Fat Cat Music Showcases show, and he will be right there at the top of that list. You've just heard everything you want to know about the Storm Chronicles. I'm Big Lou. Have a great day.